Welcome to Barry Interesting. I'm Barry Aycock, your host, and joining me today is the winningest coach in college basketball history, Coach Gene Bess. 1,300 wins over a 50-year coaching career at Three Rivers College, 2 national championships, and 17 trips to the national tournament. And most recently, you were selected for inclusion in the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. Coach Bess, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, Barry. I never get tired of hearing those statistics, but I'm glad to be here, and anytime I can get out and visit, I look forward to that.
Well, what we try to do here, Coach, at A-Corp Media is to document the history of Southeast Missouri. You're not only a big part of history of Southeast Missouri, but you're a big part of basketball history in the whole world. So we're truly honored and privileged to have you here today. I've got a lot of questions for you. You've probably done over 1 million interviews. I said 1,000 a while ago, but I'm turning it into 1 million.
Yeah.
We're going to try to make this less boring because I'm a pretty boring guy. So I'm going to try to make this not boring for our viewing audience.
Well, I hope I can answer them decently.
You're going to be good. So you started your coaching career at the high school level, correct?
Yes.
Where did you start your career at?
Lesterville, 57, I think it was, and I stayed there 2 years, and then I went to 2 other high schools for 5 years. 5 years at Anniston and 5 years at Oran. And I got a good background, I think, when I combine all those different situations, and I was blessed where I went.
Well, I've got one little side question for you already.
Yeah.
So I got to know Coach Carroll Cookson, who recently passed away. He's become a good friend of mine. His whole family's friends of mine. His wife is a great basketball intellect before she passed away, but there's one thing he told me coaching high school basketball. He said, Barry, you know, I've been here living in your place for like 1.5 years now. He said, I was undefeated except for the ones that the refs cheated me out of. Did you ever have that problem?
You know, I really was winning big until I got a little bit of a tough administration, just to be honest with you. Referees were a part of the game, but I really didn't have a lot of trouble with referees. There just wasn't any good ones, you know. I guess Carl Townsend, you know, he might have been as good as there was in the country, but basketball has to cover the referees, and I don't think it's possible for them to please everybody.
Well, there's one more thing he told me. He said, Barry, you see all my former players come in to visit me here? He said, you've never seen a referee walk in, have you? So he wasn't very popular with the referees. So we'll get off the referees.
Well, that's, yeah.
So, Coach, you grew up in Oak Ridge, correct? Tell us a little bit about your family.
I had, there was 4 siblings, and they're all passed away now. And one of the things that I really missed, and you know, I've had an honor recently with Hall of Fame, and I really wish I could have told my brother and 2 sisters. I wish they could have been there for that, because they, you know, we grew up kind of poor, and we struggled, and there was a lot of things that we did just to you know, to get it done, get life done. But those 2 brothers, I mean, that brother and 2 sisters were really important people in my life, and of course my mom and dad, and they were special people. But it's kind of interesting, this last little deal that I have had with the Hall of Fame. I know they'd have been surprised, very surprised, but they'd have been thankful, and they'd have been there supporting him.
What did your mom and dad do, like when you were raised? What career did they have? Were they sports-minded people, your parents?
Really kind of interesting. They were farmers. You know, my dad was a farmer. He had 110 acres, and my grandpa had 40 acres, and he farmed 150 acres, and I was one of his chief workers, and he actually loved basketball, but he never would encourage me to do a lot of basketball because he said I needed to learn how to work. But he was about 6'1" and had played basketball. It was kind of interesting. I told my daughter about him, and my mom said that they used to stop by and pick him up, take him along to jump center. They jump center after every made basket. I never did talk to him about that, but my daughter thought that was pretty interesting, and I think he, it's kind of strange. He went to every game that he could go to within reason, and took me with him, and so he would have not wanted me to have ever got sidetracked and got away from working, but he I don't know if he was a very good player or not, but he was tall and I guess could jump center because they stopped and took him along with them.
I think that was the essence of the times, though. Like parents and grandparents thought everybody needed 3 jobs back then and no sports, correct?
Well, and my grandpa lived, right next to us, and he was the kindest little guy I'd ever known. And my daddy was quite the opposite, maybe. He didn't think there was, anything but work. But my grandpa lived over across the field, and he always wanted me to come and stay the night with him, and I did it once, I think. And he had straw ticking for a mattress, and I'm sure there's some older people that probably would know what I was talking about. I can still remember my mom would say something about bed bugs, but if you slept on straw ticking, you didn't sleep very good if you even gave one thought to a bed bug. But anyhow, I had great people around me, and that's the thing that I have to say about them. They were totally supportive and good people.
And bringing us forward, when did you get married and start having a family?
I think I was 26, and I was coaching at Anniston, and I met the love of my life, and at the same time that I got married, I started going to church, and several really important things happened to me during that little stretch of time, and my wife was very much involved in my success. And then I had our first child was a little girl, and she, to this day, she's still the prettiest kid I've ever seen. But my wife talks about how at the hospital I had my nose up against the window, and I didn't want to leave. So anyhow, that was an exciting occasion in my life too. And then we actually had two more boys, and one of them is here today, and I had probably the greatest experience with him that you could ever have. When he was born, he stayed with me pretty much his whole life, and there's nothing more important to a father, I'd say, than to have a son that he went away for 2 years to college, but I got blessed. The people at Poplar Bluff allowed me to bring him in as my assistant coach, and he was the best choice that I had, and he remains as good a coach as I've ever worked with.
We're glad to have Brian here in the studio with us today, but I didn't know where you were going with that, Coach. It sounds like to me that your firstborn was your favorite there for a minute. I didn't know where you was going with that.
Well, I probably wouldn't want to deny that, but I've had some great grandchildren, and now that I've been totally blessed with family.
So, Coach, you were 2 years at Lesterville and 5 years at Anniston. Did you have a lot of success at Anniston?
You know, it was really kind of interesting. It was cotton picking country, and I can remember the kids, they'd have 2 weeks of vacation during the fall. And when I first went in down there, I knew I was going to have a hard time because I think, it was not, they weren't training well. I can remember going into the gym and I could smell the nicotine. And, but anyhow, they were the toughest little guys that I've ever been around, and they really made progress. And I think that's kind of where I learned to coach. I had a punishment and rewards situation. You won 3 and 5 and 7, whatever it is. You better do something. You're not going to be around long. But those guys, I still visit with them, and they have such great pride in their basketball, and they really love me. And it was one of those situations where I felt like I really had to get tough with them, and they appreciated it. And I really think basically that's what a kid wants even today. They really want to be successful, and they want discipline, and how you do it is, you as a coach, I guess that's probably the primary thing that you really try to do is effort. And that group, this day you go in down there, and those guys really got better, and they've carried it with them the rest of their lives. In fact, I think 2 or 3 are dead now. They were getting, they're close to as old as I am, I think, but they really appreciated the success they had as players. So,
Coach, you actually struggled when you started that job, and you kind of built that program, because I heard you say you had like 26, 28 wins your last 2 years there.
30, 20, something like 28 and 2 the last year.
Is that where you kind of learned to build a program?
I think I developed right about that period of time.
Then you made the jump to Oran.
I enjoyed my time at Oran. And I really think that the stuff that I learned at Anniston carried over to Oran. I've told some people I usually tried to find an edge. You know, I didn't want to cheat or anything, but I wanted to, you know, kind of be a pioneer in certain areas if you had to have that. And I still remember we were playing Scott Central, and they had beat us first 2 times. And I decided I was going to film the games. And we did the film, put it on a Greyhound bus, and got it back in the next afternoon. And I watched it, you know, and the kids they thrived on this. But I can still remember that we played that team, Scott Central, that's what we call them now. I think it was Morley then. But the 3rd time we played them, they had beat us like 15 or 18 the first 2 times. And the 3rd time we played them, I made a little change. I put Fred Johnson out at the point. Fred could see, and we beat them like the last 3 times, you know, pretty handily. So that was kind of, you know, that was an important move for me as a coach, and my players really thrived on that too, and we lifted weights, and we did a lot of things that I thought was, you know, cutting edge.
Well, filming was cutting edge because probably nobody ever heard of it back then, correct? Filming other teams, that was probably a big deal.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I always, you know, Joe Lula was up at Cape, and I became real good friends when I was in college, and he told me that, or he convinced me that weightlifting would make a kid quicker. And you know, here was old Joe, about 240, quick and lifted, and that, I think just the idea of lifting made a kid, you know, gave him confidence. But I always thought that was an edge that we got. And we, you know, I thought nutrition was a big factor, and all of that was something that I tried to maybe do that would help kids have a little more confidence in themselves and whatever.
Well, Coach, let's get back to the state championship. So you lost the state championship in 1969 versus Dixon,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and they had an soon-to-be NBA player on that team.
John Brown, and of course, you know, they were scoring about 130 a game, and it was right at a time when blacks started getting into the sport, and we had 4 blacks on our team that were, you know, just really good people, and to this day they're the best people I know. Fred and John and Don, and but anyhow, they weren't very big, but they were pretty tough, and we played Dixon up at Missouri, you know, at Mizzou, the field house,
Mm-hmm.
and it became, you know, it was quite a championship. And anyhow, what happened was we went down. The game came down to the wire, and nip and tuck. And Fred Johnson had a 1-and-1 at the line, and he hit the first one after probably took too long. Most people didn't know you only had 10 seconds at the line, and I had some players that didn't know that, and I felt like that was partly my fault, but I didn't think a referee would actually ever get to the point where they would call that.
And the game's on the line here, right?
Yeah,
at the end of the game?
The game was on the line. And so he gets Fred, I guess we were down one or whatever it was. And he gets the second free throw and takes a little time, but he, about 7 seconds, and he hits it. No, that time the referee comes in and takes the ball away from him. And, I mentioned the referee. Gene Bess was one of the referees, and he ended up actually heading up the NFL referees. But he was the one that took the ball away from Fred and said he'd froze at the line. And
so they took the ball away from him.
Took the ball away from him, and we end up losing. I have no doubt, but Fred's going to hit that second one, and people didn't know why I didn't call a timeout. And I thought, well, I didn't feel, I knew it was going to be very important, but I didn't know it was going to be the key to the game.
So that was the end of you decided to jump to junior college then. How'd you get that opportunity to go to TRC?
It was kind of interesting. Bob Craddock was the head coach at Three Rivers, and he had seen our game, and he liked some of our players, and he recruited some of them, and then he was able to get an assistant coach, and he got me, and I'm forever thankful for Bob Craddock. That was really my all-time honey job. I mean, it was something that I wanted to do from early on, and I guess what's the old saying? If you love your job, you won't have to go to work. And I stayed 50 years at Poplar Bluff, and I never got tired of getting up and going to work.
Well, that was a pivotal moment in your life and career, because it's very difficult nowadays to go from high school to junior college job, and you got that opportunity. So what happened to the head coach where you got to become the head coach?
He went to SEMO. He was, he was really smart. He had a radio job and whole works up at Poplar Bluff. And he decided to go to SEMO and recommended me for Three Rivers. And
the rest is history.
That's right.
Well, you had real success right away at Three Rivers, finishing 4th in the nation your first year at the helm in 1971. In your first 10 years, you finished in the top 5 in the nation 5 times. So when did you realize, hey, I can do this, I'm good at this?
Well, I think there was a time when I was at Anniston, and I thought that I would never make it in coaching. And I think most coaches come to the conclusion they either have to, get more effective, or they won't make it. And I really felt good. Never felt like I had it made at Three Rivers, but the first year to me it was a miracle the way we won that ball game, and I was always blessed to have good players that really wanted to be there.
Well, let's talk about your first national championship in 1979. Tell us about that season and a few of your key players.
I'm trying to think. I'll probably forget. I remember them very well, but I probably won't pronounce them. But, you know, Moon McCrary and Milton Woodley and Robert Kirby, I think, was six-man, and Sil James and Mark Geatley. And then there was another one, I think, that I'm not thinking. But that was just really good people that they've remained my friends even to this day. You know, Mark Geatley, we have a good time talking. He says I guarded him better than any other team. And, you know, he didn't like it because I didn't want him shooting it every time he caught it. And, you know, most players really don't want to be told too much about shooting opportunities, but we understand each other pretty good, and he's one of the best players we've ever had, simply because he just did what he could do and did it the best that he could do it. And then some of those other guys were, you know, McCrary played. Norm Stewart thought he was as good as he ever had, and Robert Kirby is a great college recruiter now, and he comes see me quite often. And you know, Milton Woodley, he'll be up there this weekend, I think, Poplar Bluff. A lot of those guys still remain friends, and they come back to Poplar Bluff, and a lot of them have, you know, groups that they gather together on frequent occasions, and I'm a part of a lot of that, so I'm just really thankful for it.
Well, I can imagine when you put Poplar Bluff, Three Rivers on the map in 1979 that the community was all abuzz back then, correct? Tell us a little bit about that, because you put Three Rivers on the map that year, correct?
I think, you know, the first president of the college, H. Tudor Westover, and he had been at Mineral area, and he told me that, you know, I can still remember, he said, "You do things right, and I'll leave you alone." And he said, if you get things together here, this will be a key to this community accepting each other. And of course, you know, the college ended up at Poplar Bluff, and a lot of people, you know, Twin Rivers and Piedmont, they didn't quite agree with that maybe, but it was really kind of miraculous the way that team came together, and then we kind of kept winning, and it was just great being a part of it.
And you won your second national championship in 1992. Tell us about some of those highlights and some of those key players. That was kind of an exciting buzzer beater, if I remember. That was one I remember.
Well, I think I'll try to remember some of them too, but they were really good athletes and good players, and we've already had the gathering. You know, I think they've actually gone into the Hall of Fame, both groups, and that group were probably more talented than the first group, but and I know that first group. I've said the second time was more fun than the first time. That first group didn't like it, and I think actually the first time it happened, I thought it might happen several times, but you know, it really didn't. And when I think of, wins and losses, I've been blessed, especially to be able to stay at Poplar Bluff for 50 years. I don't know of any coach that has been able to do that, any place. And and then the number of wins, of course, is another exciting thing, but I don't know how long that record will last. But this second group, Milton Woodley, that was
wasn't that the Anthony Bean era?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the Anthony Bean buzzer beater championship?
That's it. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it was a great bunch of kids.
And that was a very exciting national championship, if I remember right. Which
Yeah.
My memory's not too good at this time, but I think he hit a buzzer shot to win the national championship.
Yeah, Anthony, he was just a really good athlete, good player, and he didn't shoot a lot, but I can still remember he hit a big one. He wasn't forbidden to shoot, but he was a winner, and he hit a big basket, and that was really an interesting game against Butler County, I think it was, and that was big time.
And that was a pretty massive team, Butler County. They were probably favored to win back then because they were in it almost every year back then, or in the
That's
Final
right.
Four. So
yeah.
yes,
and they were tough. They were tough, and our kids had a nice game to win it.
Well, Coach, for 5 decades, you took a team to the National Junior College tournament. That's probably may never happen again. And has the game evolved over the last 5 decades? Is it tougher for your son to recruit? How has the game evolved over the last 5 decades?
I really think he ought to be able to do that too, since he's here.
You're putting a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, I want to. He's the best guy I know to be in charge, and I think he's going to do well before it's over. He's got a good organization now. But as far as 50 years, I don't think that's even his goal. I think he just wants to do the best he can each year, and he was an assistant with me for 28 years, and I had no complaints. I was just thankful that I had a guy around me that smart enough helped me make decisions, and he did a great job.
Well, that's a good question. You know how many of your former players, your son kind of followed in your footsteps? Your footsteps are going to be hard to replace for any coach, but I know Anthony Bean's coaching. You know how many of your former players went into the coaching profession?
Someone figured it out, I think, not too long ago, and it was like, I don't know, 43 or something like that.
Well, that's a heck of a legacy.
Well, and Paul Hale and a bunch of those guys, Lennis McFerrin, those guys, they are just super coaches, and it's so good to see them be successful.
Well, Coach, I would never ask you to rank your best player or favorite player, but I did have dinner with Ray Pugh recently in Carbondale. He's doing really good, but give me kind of a flavor of not your favorite players, but your best players. I know he only played there for a year, but
I've pretty much decided not to rank my players, but we're in the process now of having Hall of Fame, and we have to make decisions. And Brian probably knows their talent and so forth better than I do, and we're having to make some decisions like that. But I try not to get off into, ranking those guys, because I don't want to get into arguments with them, because they all think they're better than they are, I think.
Well, my favorite player is Chad Allen.
You picked a pretty good one.
I'll just go ahead and go out on a limb there. He's my favorite player, okay?
You didn't go far wrong.
Well, tell us about coaching Latrell Sprewell. He's kind of one of your better-known athletes that come out of Three Rivers. Tell us about coaching Latrell Sprewell.
Charlie Spoonire put him in there for me. I think it was his assistant put him in there, and he was kind of a city kid, and he actually was maybe one of the smartest players I've ever coached. And I haven't heard from him lately, and but he worked hard and did a good job while he was there.
Well, there's a lot of your players that played in some high-profile games. I remember Sunday Adebayo played in some big games after he left Three Rivers. So he's got a lot of big name players.
He really got shafted somehow at Three Rivers. Word got out. He lost a year, and then he got it back again. And I thought he was definitely a pro player, but things factored in that shouldn't have. But he's doing really well now. He's down in where has he got his? He's in business down in Little Rock, doing well.
Very successful from what I hear, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Coach, are there any of your games besides your 2 national championships that stick out to you? The 1,300 wins, is there one that really sticks out that was really important or pivotal in your career?
I guess every game I lost was a memory. And thing about basketball, you better gear up every time you go. You take a game lightly, and that's the one you'll lose, and that'll be the one that can turn you around or get you going in the wrong direction. And when I look at 1,300 games, my daughter kind of helped me put it in perspective. My thought was I didn't finish well, and I thought we lost a few late in my career that I shouldn't have lost. But when you think about when you stop at 1,300, God's involved somehow or another. And there was a time when I think I had won. I say I, but our program had gone about 82%. That was pretty good. And then I think we ended up, 75 or whatever it was. Every game that we played was important. And do games stand out? A lot of them do, but I have always been one that I wanted to move on, and the next game was the only important game I really thought about.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up about God, because I know faith has played a very important part of your life and your career. Tell us how that has affected you as a basketball coach, your faith, because you got to have faith, right?
Yes. Um, you know, this morning I had a little meeting with a group, and one of the guys talked about how I was able to give God the credit, and that I forget the word he used, but I just thought to myself, it's pretty simple to me. I've just seen God get involved and take over. And I've been so blessed with family. And right now, my daughter and my son are really involved in a lot of the stuff that I'm doing. And Brian has a daughter that can play.
I've heard about her.
And she, that's been, you know, I had someone came up to me, one of our board members, and he said, you've been trying to recruit those great players, and now you raised one. And she's having to make a decision. She's going to another situation, and but she's a doll. That's the only way I can put it. And people ask me who the best player that I've ever had, or who would I rather watch play? It would be her.
Sounds like you do have a favorite in the family right now, then.
That's
anyway.
right.
So, Coach, you're a member of the Poplar Bluff Sports Hall of Fame, the Missouri Basketball Coaches Hall of Fame, the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame, and now the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. Tell us what it means to you being up there with the greatest players and coaches of all time. What does that mean to you?
This last one was just totally unexpected on my part. You know, as far as I know, there's no other junior college player in there that only went junior college. But my family and I are going through this, and we're going to have to go, you know, up to Massachusetts. I think it's the 11th and 12th of August, and it is something that I think is maybe the highest honor that a basketball coach can receive, and I'm not sure how I got there, but I'm just thankful I did. And I'm so excited. I didn't expect to be amongst Dwayne Wade and those two big guys that are there and so forth. But I am totally enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to going up there in August.
That's going to be a big week and weekend for your family. I'm sure you got a lot of airline tickets and hotel rooms booked already.
There is a few.
The next thing you know, you'll be on Dwayne Wade's game show after you get hooked up with him.
Hey, you know, it's really kind of interesting. His daddy was on the bus. You know, his daddy was a part of his group. And as he was walking by, he talked to me. He said, 1,300 games. I can't believe it. He said, I'm a coach, and I've won 125. And he said, I don't know how you've done it. And I thought, who is this guy? But anyhow, it was Dwayne Wade's dad.
See, he was amazed too. Dwayne Wade's amazed, I'm sure. So, Coach, who was your mentor as a coach? Who do you pattern yourself after?
You know, that's really kind of interesting. I was talking to Fred Johnson a couple days ago, and he said, you know, us guys were up in St. Louis, and we were listening to Johnny Wooden. And he said, I went up to him. He was sitting there getting ready to go on go on to his speech, and he said, I talked to him, and he said, I play for a guy that emulated you a lot. And he said, Gene Bess. And, you know, I'd never been able to talk to him, but he was a fabulous person, old Johnny Wooden. But my players, I you know, I think that they have done a good job, and I think they know how important they are in my life, and of course my own family is very important.
What visiting team or arena did you like playing in? Did you just not like the atmosphere and it was fun?
I guess the one that I received quite a bit of whatever you want to call it, Mobley. They had a little gym, and we were the only team, Three Rivers, we were the only team that could go in there and beat them. And they had a guy up there that just hated me. But, you know, it was kind of interesting the way if you're playing pretty good. We actually had an 83 game winning streak at the Bess Activity Center. So we had an edge, and those were good places to play, for sure.
Who was the best visiting player you coached against?
Sonny Parker was pretty good for Mineral area. He just had carriage about him. He ended up playing pro. But there's been a lot of others.
One last question, Coach. What feeling did you have? Because nobody else could have this feeling. You had a bronze statue unveiled at Three Rivers College not very long ago. I watched it on KFVS 12. It had to be a great feeling for you and your family. So how did that make you feel?
You know, I always had a question about statues. I didn't know, biblically whether you're supposed to do that, but it was a great thing. I felt so excited about it. It just went to show you how that booster club at Poplar Bluff promoted me. And I don't know how I ended up in the Hall of Fame, but all that kind of ran together, and I had great support, and I love so many people there in that town.
Well, you are a people person. You're an inspiration to many people in Southeast Missouri, the United States, the world. I mean, it gave me a great sense of pride when I saw your name flashing on the bottom of ESPN that, the winningest coach in college history, Naismith Hall of Fame. So you've been an inspiration of all. We've got more out of you than you've got out of this area. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for coming over to the historical Malden Air Base today and being a part of the show.
Well, I'm certainly honored to be here. I'm sorry we showed up a little late, but this is a great experience for me. I have appreciated all the attention I got here.
Well, Coach Gene Bess, 1,300 wins. It's hard to fathom, 1,300 wins. I'm like Dwayne Wade's dad. It's hard to fathom. If you stack those wins up on a table, it would reach to the moon. So thank you.
Thank you.
God bless.
Gary. God bless you. Appreciate it.
Gene Bess.